The U.S. State Department says it has processed 6,000 people who will soon be departing Afghanistan through the Kabul International Airport. This as officials feverishly try to evacuate U.S. citizens and Afghan allies as the Taliban exerts full control over the country. The chaotic withdrawal and Taliban takeover weighs heavily on the minds of the tens of thousands of American service members who have fought in the 20-year war. And joining us now are two veterans of the war and Chicago natives, Brent Webb, who served in the U.S. Air Force from 2006 to 2012. He was deployed to Afghanistan in 2010, where he flew missions in support of U.S. Special Forces. He's currently the 2nd District Commander of the American Legion in Chicago. And Tom Amenta, formerly a member of the 75th Ranger Regiment. Amenta served 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan in 2002 and 2004, where he was involved in operations to find high-value al-Qaeda targets involved in the September 11th attacks. He's also co-author of the soon-to-be-released book, The 20-Year War, that profiles veterans involved in the global war on terror. A heartfelt thank you both for your service, and thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us here.
So, Tom Amenta, first, your initial reaction to the images we've seen the last few days of people desperately trying to flee in Kabul and the shockingly swift takeover of the country by the Taliban.
Anger, just fury. I'm so angry. I am so upset. We in the military, one of the things you do is you plan for the best case, the worst case, and the most likely case scenario. And clearly the worst case was never considered because we're seeing it right now. We do not have right now, as many as those 6,000 you're talking about are on their way home, and thank God for that. We don't have a plan right now if the Americans, our citizens, cannot get to Hamid Karzai International Airport. We don't have a plan to go get them. Unlike the Brits, unlike the French that are currently have their special operations troops deployed to go actively bring their people to the airport. And further, we don't have a real solid plan to support and bring our allies back as well. It's just this sounds harsh, but it's an unmitigated disaster right now. And I don't understand how the administration didn't see this or was not willing to accept the possibility of the worst case scenario.
And to that end, we have heard reports on the ground there that there have been trouble for some people getting to Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul. Brent Webb, your reaction to everything we've seen over the last 5 days?
I think, so being very active in the veteran community here in Chicago, you take a lot of stories from folks. And last Friday, whenever the country started to fall apart, I had a Vietnam veteran at our American Legion Hall come over to me, and he said, he kind of buttonholed me in the hallway, and he goes, "Hey, Brent, I want you to know that what's about to happen is going to hurt really bad." And I didn't really understand what he meant quite then yet, because I was thinking to myself, well, they still got a chance. I mean, Kabul's not down yet. I mean, the ANA, we've been training for so long, they got to be putting up a fight, whatever. And then Sunday, whenever we saw that Kabul had fallen or was about to fall, I remember that it was just a lot of feelings of despair, powerlessness, and a sense of just, I suppose you'd say, you can't believe that they let it get this bad. And I think Tom's absolutely right that, this is something that being on the ground in the time we were there, we always try to take all these different scenarios into mind so we can make the plans for them. And it doesn't seem like that happened. And that's extremely frustrating because we wanted this to go differently.
And speaking of all those potential scenarios, yesterday, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, echoed President Biden's comments that the administration didn't think the Taliban would take over so fast. Take a look.
There was nothing that I or anyone else saw that indicated a collapse of this army and this government in 11 days.
Tom Amenta, does it make sense to you that there would be no intel that at least considered this as a possibility that this would happen so fast?
No. And the reason that I say that is when you understand what we were doing and how we were supporting the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Police Force, it was primarily through air resources, overhead air cover missions, logistics, and things to help support them to do their mission. And so when you remove those things, you're already going to create a massive problem. But the other thing that we did, and we need to be honest about what we as Americans did to the Afghan National Army and their police force, we demoralized them by leaving in the middle of the night from Bagram Airfield. We didn't even have a proper battlefield handoff with General Miller. We just cased the colors and bounced. So when they're relying on us for the safety of both drone feeds from predators and bombing missions and helicopter support if needed for attack runs, and also the logistics of how to feed them, how to keep their airframes, in their labor, their maintenance, all those things. That's primarily what we're doing. And suddenly all that's gone in the middle of the night. That is going to just be crushing to any military if they have no logistics, let alone expecting your ally. And the other thing that the administration is talking about, this questioning their will to fight or anything like that. According to the Brookings Institute, 45,000 Afghan nationals have died in service of that nation over the past 6 years. So this narrative that they somehow don't have the will to fight, that's a 2,000% increase over the number of Americans, KIAs, over the entire length of the war. I'm not trying to make an apples to apples comparison here, or upset someone, but merely point out that this narrative of they somehow didn't have a will to fight or they somehow weren't capable, I just think is false. And I think that when you understand the logistics and the support that we were giving them and how we pulled, frankly, the rug right out from under them in the middle of the night, no less, that should have been factored into that potential worst case scenario.
Brent, as we mentioned, you deployed in 2010. The President Biden is saying, we should not be there nation building. Did you get a sense of what the overarching purpose or mission of why you were there in 2010 was? And do you have a different feeling on that now?
I do think, and it's funny because it was so long ago and that we've lingered here for such a long period of time. But I believe that even whenever I was in Afghanistan in 2010, I was very excited to go. I know before going, I wanted to say, I want to serve a purpose, a very good purpose for the United States. And it felt like a sense of that when we get there, we're finally going to understand what's happening on the ground. And we're going to understand what we can do to make this work. And then I think that even when we were there, as we were saying kind of before the segment began, is that a war is made up of many battles, and we went out there and we fought many battles, and we accomplished a lot of things. We were protecting schools. We were taking out enemies that were clear and present dangers to American troops and coalition troops and everything else. But then I do think even then, and I was a 21-year-old man, even I working in the intelligence community could see that there was just a hyper focus on doing these smaller tasks, hoping they would build up to a sort of like a huge coming together of all these different strategies that led to a unified plan that finally drove out these enemy forces, and that never materialized. And I think, to talk about the earlier question too, is that there was a sense then that a lot of the officers that we worked with in the higher levels, not that there weren't some incredible officers that were working day and night to do the right thing to protect their forces, but there were others that I served with that they simply, I think, they didn't have a sense really of, there was a sense of groupthink that we're just going to continue to do this over and over again, and then it's eventually going to come together. And there wasn't a sense of realism that we really need to look at what is happening on the ground, who are the major players here, and then we have to come up with a really creative plan to make this work. It was just a lot of the same things we did in Vietnam, a lot of coin strategies, counterinsurgency strategies that worked some of the time, and I never felt that there was a unified sort of sense of this is why we're here, and that's led a lot of veterans to question their service and to question, what the meaning of this was. Whenever when I left the war, I said, well, I'll go back again, but I want there to be a really clear sign of leadership about what we're doing here, what the end goal is, and that never materialized. Certainly
a lot of looking back happening now. And Talamenta, you mentioned that you feel like everything about this withdrawal has been a disaster. How dangerous is it right now for Afghans that help the United States forces, and what does the United States need to do to be able to safely evacuate them going forward?
Well, I can say that I have gotten communications from friends that are currently trying to exfil people right now in real time, and they are saying that they're getting that their Afghan colleagues are getting text messages or notes put on their door saying that when the Americans leave, you're going to die. And I've heard that from more than one person. I can tell you that the Afghan special operations community, if they don't think that they can get out with us, they're currently rapidly trying to get up north to where the Northern Alliance is so they can attempt to fight, because they know that they're going to be in a gunfight no matter what. They've been highly targeted. And how to get them out? The president of the United States, Joe Biden, has to have the humility to admit that he made a mistake, something he did not do last night in that George Stephanopoulos interview, by saying that he didn't think that he's made a mistake and he didn't think that that there's anything to apologize for, and send over people that are capable of enforcing the safety of moving this through. You're seeing video of people getting shot at, of ducking from gunfires or trying to get to Hamid Karzai International Airport. I really don't want my friends and current members of the special operations community to have to go in there and put themselves in harm's way. But if we're really going to live up to our promise of bringing these people back, if we're really going to go find a way to get all of these approximately 10,000, 7,500 Americans that are all over the country, we need people that are capable of not just saber rattling, which is what we've done to date, but say, if you mess with us, we will unsheath the sword. I'm not saying do it, to be clear. I am saying that we have to have the capability, which frankly we're lacking, unlike some of our allies like the British and the French. They brought the sword right now. They're not using it, but they will if the Taliban decides that they want to interfere with the pullout of those foreign nationals.
All right, there's just so much to watch for the next few days, and we have to leave it there, even though there's so much more we could discuss. Our thanks again to Brent Webb and Tom Amenta. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.